Welcome to the Everyday Miracles Toolkit. This is a coaching video about shame. Do you know about shame? Do you experience shame? If you're a human being and not a cat, you might be a cat watching this, and then you probably do not know what I'm talking about. But if you're a human being, let's have our starting point in this conversation be an assumption that you know a little bit about shame. Now, I have a very, how will I say this? I have a very tender relationship with the parts of me in my system that feel shame. I feel a lot of compassion for those parts. I have a lot of time for them. I have a lot of understanding. And I want to extend that as the invitation of this video. Okay, this little bit of coaching, this moment together on this topic. I want us to start this whole conversation from a place of enormous compassion for the parts of us that experience shame. And I also want to say that what I'm so interested in is that often a lot of shame comes up when we come to a path like A Course in Miracles and we study with other people, or we study on our own. We often feel like we're not getting it. Everyone else is getting it. And we also feel like the parts of us that are running our lives, are, we're making our decisions from, that are awake in our dynamics in our relationships. We often feel that we are way behind other people, that the things we're feeling, we're too ashamed to bring them into a study group or into a webinar, or we think, gosh, I need to banish parts of me because I'm too ashamed of them. I can't possibly admit that I get angry with my family. I can't possibly admit that, I'm not particularly kind to the people, who are around me when I'm driving, because I'm supposed to be a Course in Miracles student. Essentially, A Course in Miracles, for some people, adds a whole layer of superego. Superego is that constant inner critical voice that is always giving us a readout on what we're doing. And it's not a fun presence to be with. It's not, those parts of us that do that are difficult to be with. And the self-critical parts get very, very strong when we come into a community where, or we spend time in a community at all, where the truth is what's at stake. Because we begin to feel that we are not showing up in the best way, that we're not doing our best job, that we're not being a presence of love. And then we feel ashamed. Now, in the workbook, we are told so clearly, and it's why I love the workbook so much, even though it challenges me. And, I've had so many difficult moments with the workbook, and, but what I love is the invitation in those early lessons, which only really came out fully to me when I began to write the commentaries, about how, in order to heal these patterns and make these inner shifts, we must bring ourselves as honestly as possible. As honestly as possible. So we're asked to really be genuinely human about the gateway that we are standing at. We're not supposed to just hop straight to, oh, well, I know myself to be a child of God. It doesn't seem to work like that for most people. It's that we have to find out, well, what are the ways where I really don't believe I'm a child of God? How is that playing out in my life? What patterns are showing me that I believe the opposite of that I believe I'm unworthy, I'm riddled by guilt, I feel behind, I give myself a hard time, I keep secrets, all of those things. Now, the requirement for honesty from A Course in Miracles, from the workbook, means that if we're going to get our cards on the table, we need to talk a little bit about shame, because the one force that will stop us being really honest, and therefore opening us up to allowing fenced off areas in ourselves to be warmed by and bathed in God's love, essentially, to be be understood and to be welcomed. If we can't get past the shame parts, the protectors in us, the parts of us that are trying to protect things by pushing things away, by saying, no, that's too shameful, don't go near that one. If we don't include shame in the conversation, we can't even often get to the honesty. I can't be honest. Let's take that example. I can't be honest about the fact that I get cross with people, I get angry with people, because we're too ashamed. So shame, is an important topic. And what I want to offer in this little bit of coaching is that whenever you feel shame, and whenever there's something you feel ashamed of, because the shame part is always attached to another part. So there'll always be something you're ashamed of. You might also just have a general feeling of shame in your system. We inherit those. We develop them, as we're growing up. And it's really difficult energy to be with. It's actually awful and very, very hard to be with. My invitation is I'm going to share a lesson from the workbook that feels very potent and very opposite to the energy of shame. And I'm going to invite you to really connect those opposites, if you like. And they're not really opposites. The love at the center of the course, the true message of the course, is a container that will welcome and heal and provide balm for shame. If we can stop seeing it like that and start seeing it like a container that's ready to handle anything, to meet anything in us, right? This love at the center of us is not a stopping place, it's a starting place. So I want to read you a couple of lines from a lesson in the workbook. It's lesson 313. So depending on whether you've done the workbook before or which stage you're at, this might be ahead for you, or this might be a lesson that you missed and skipped over when you did it the first or the second time. I often read these lessons and feel like it's the first time I've ever read them. And I want you to listen to this invitation in this lesson, and I want you to have the feeling that there is this deep, wise presence that sees beyond your shame and also welcomes your shame, welcomes the parts of you that feel shame, isn't frightened of the parts of you that feel shame, says you're not on your own. Everyone feels shame. I want you to really feel the invitation that's here. So don't listen to this and think, oh, well, I'm never going to get there. And let shame remain as the glue in your system that keeps you from getting there. I want you to really imagine that a wise, loving adult is sharing this with you, and that wise, loving adult has arms open to any parts of you that are experiencing shame and will experience shame, in whatever situation might be coming up for you. So this lesson 313, I want to really dedicate to the topic of shame. Okay, and the title of this lesson is Now Let a New Perception Come to Me. So let's hold this shame. Okay, let's hold it here. Maybe even you could feel it in your body. How does it feel when you feel ashamed? For me, as soon as I say that, I get a bit of a yucky feeling in my tummy. I feel a bit tight. I feel a bit clenched. How does it feel for you to feel shame? Just hold it in your hand. And then we take the invitation of A Course in Miracles. Now let a new perception come to me. Okay, and most often this perception that we're being asked to shift is the one at the center of everything. It's the one that affects the whole. If you want to increase the health of a flower bush and how many flowers it is going to give you in the summer, it's going to offer to your garden. If you speak to a gardener, or we know this anyway, but if you speak to a gardener, they'll say, this is how to feed the roots. This is how to build them up in the winter, or this is the time of the year to add food or extra water because it's dry at the moment in the weather system or whatever. The root in A Course in Miracles that affects everything is always our relationship with ourselves, which means how we see ourselves. So when it says, now let a new perception come to me, and we're talking about shame, let's really be open to that invitation, that this place that we feel shameful about, this thing we feel shameful about, this pattern, this difficulty, whatever it is that's keeping us separate from the world, separate from the people around us who love us. Let's imagine that there's a whole new way of seeing ourselves, and that this shame has the potential to just be dissolved and loved back into the whole. Like it becomes compost for growth if we can bring together this new perception and this long-held belief that we have everything to be ashamed of. Okay. So I just want to read a little bit of this lesson. So the first thing I want to draw our attention to, and please pause and go and find this lesson and open it up and write notes if you'd like to, but I'm just going to offer a couple of things. So I want to talk about, in paragraph 1, the second line, it says this: love will come wherever it is asked. Now, I don't know about you, but when I'm feeling shame, that's the last thought on my mind. That's the last thing I'm thinking of. I'm just consumed by a feeling of shame, and that's kind of the end of the story, when I'm really in it. But what if A Course in Miracles is really offering us this whole other way of seeing our shame and the parts of us that we feel ashamed of? Love will come wherever it is asked, wherever, even and maybe especially to those parts of us that feel the most